The Harlan Estate Cabernet should have tasted like blackberries and leather, with notes of tobacco that lingered on the tongue long after you swallowed. $200 a bottle, 96 points from Wine Spectator, the kind of wine I'd built my entire career understanding. Instead, it tasted like nothing. I set the glass down carefully on the white tablecloth at the French Laundry, my hand steadier than it had been in weeks. Across from me, my son Connor leaned forward, concern creasing his forehead in a way that reminded me painfully of his mother. "Dad, you look awful." "I'm fine." The lie came easier each time. "You're not." His wife Sarah touched his arm, her emerald silk dress catching the candlelight. Too much gold at her throat, her wrists. She'd always worn too much gold. "Theodore, the dizzy spells are getting worse." I hated when she called me Theodore. My wife Margaret had called me Richard. Everyone else called me Richard. But Sarah had decided, somewhere along the way, that using my first name made us closer. It didn't. "The doctor said it's age-related degeneration," Connor continued, exchanging a glance with his wife. "You need to step back before something serious happens." The room tilted slightly when I turned my head. It had been doing that for months now, these sudden shifts in gravity that made me grab for table edges and door frames. The loss of smell had come first, 6 months ago, maybe longer. I'd walk through the barrel room at the estate and smell nothing where oak and tannins should have filled my lungs. Then taste followed, draining away like water through cupped hands. At 68, maybe they were right. Maybe my body was finally giving out after 40 years of 12-hour days and harvest seasons that bled into winter. "The power of attorney papers," Connor said gently, carefully. "Sign them next week. Let me handle the day-to-day operations. You can finally rest." 40 years I'd built Ashford Estate Winery, 3 generations of Ashford blood in that Napa Valley soil. My grandfather had brought the original vines from Bordeaux in 1952, planted them in earth he'd tested with his own hands. My father had expanded the vineyards, built the reputation, and I'd turned it into something worth $120 million, but I couldn't taste my own wines anymore. I'd fainted twice in the past month, once in the middle of a tasting with distributors from New York. The humiliation of coming to on the cellar floor, surrounded by concerned faces, had been worse than the physical collapse. "Fine," I heard myself say. "I'll sign next week." The relief on Connor's face should have comforted me. My only child, 37 years old, ready to take the reins of the family legacy. Margaret would have been proud. Instead, something cold settled in my chest, something I couldn't name. We finished dinner in near silence. I pushed my duck confit around the plate, unable to distinguish it from cardboard. The sommelier, a young woman with sharp eyes and a name tag that read Emily Carter, poured our final glasses with practiced precision. I noticed her watching Connor as she poured, her expression carefully neutral, but something flickered there. Recognition? Concern? Then it was gone, and she was moving to the next table. By 10 o'clock we were standing in the parking lot. The jasmine gardens that the French Laundry was famous for should have perfumed the night air. I smelled nothing. Just absence where my senses used to be. "Drive safe, Dad." Connor hugged me, his cologne overwhelming even to my damaged nose, chemical, artificial. Always do. I was halfway home, winding through dark Napa roads, when I realized my phone was missing. I patted my jacket pockets, checked the passenger seat. Nothing. Must have left it at the restaurant. I turned the car around. 20 minutes later, I pulled back into the French Laundry's parking lot. Most of the lights were off now, the last diner's gone, but I could see movement inside through the windows. The sommelier, Emily, met me at the door. Instead of opening it, she locked it behind me with a soft click. "Mr. Ashford." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "You need to see something." "I just need my phone." "I know." She cut me off, her hands visibly shaking. "It's in the back. But first, I could lose my job for this. I could lose everything. But I can't stay quiet." Something in her voice stopped my protest. She was young, maybe late 20s, with the kind of controlled intensity I recognized from my own early days in the wine business. People who cared that much didn't shake unless it mattered. She led me past the empty dining room, our footsteps muffled by thick carpet, into a cramped storage room that smelled of cleaning supplies and cardboard. My phone sat beside a security monitor, exactly where I must have left it on the table. But Emily wasn't looking at my phone. She was pulling up footage on the monitor, her fingers trembling on the keyboard. I installed this camera myself, she said quietly. 3 weeks ago. The restaurant doesn't know about it. Why would you? Just watch. The screen showed Table 12. My table, the dinner that had ended an hour ago. I watched myself stand and walk toward the restroom, my gait unsteady even on camera. The moment my back turned, Connor moved. Quick, practiced, like he'd done it 100 times before. He reached into his jacket, the same jacket he'd worn to his mother's funeral, I noticed absurdly, and pulled out a small vial, clear liquid, maybe half an ounce. He uncapped it with his thumb, glanced once at Sarah, and poured it into my wine glass, the glass I'd drunk from when I returned. Sarah saw. She didn't stop him. She turned her body slightly, shielding him from the view of other diners, and smiled at something on her phone. But that wasn't the worst part. After I sat back down, after I'd drunk the wine and grimaced at the taste I could barely detect, Connor waited until I looked away. Then his shoulders hunched. His head wobbled in a cruel mimicry of my tremor. His face twisted into an exaggerated expression of confusion, eyes unfocused, mouth slack. And Sarah laughed, silent on the security footage but unmistakable. Her shoulders shook with it. My son, poisoning me, mocking me. My knees went out. I didn't feel myself hit the floor. One moment I was standing, watching my child's betrayal replay in grainy digital clarity, and the next I was on my hands and knees on cold concrete, Emily's hands catching my shoulders. I'm so sorry, she kept saying. I'm so sorry. I didn't know how else to. I'm sorry. Time did something strange, compressed and expanded simultaneously. I was aware of Emily helping me to my feet, of stumbling through the storage room door, of night air that should have smelled like jasmine but didn't. You can't drive like this, Emily said. I'm fine. You're not. Her young face was fierce under the parking lot lights. Mr. Ashford, what are you going to do? What was I going to do? The board meeting was Friday, 5 days. If I did nothing, if I signed those papers next week like I'd promised, Connor would control everything. The estate, the vineyards, the wines my grandfather had planted and my father had nurtured, and I had perfected over 4 decades of my life. By next month, I'd be warehoused in some coastal condo, isolated and confused, while my son destroyed everything Margaret and I had built. This ends Friday, I said. The words surprised me with their certainty. Somewhere between the storage room and the parking lot, between seeing my son's face twist in mockery and feeling Emily's hands steady on my shoulders, something had crystallized. Whatever illness I'd thought I had, whatever age-related degeneration the doctors had diagnosed, it was a lie. Connor had been poisoning me. For months, maybe longer, making me weak enough, confused enough, desperate enough to sign away my life's work. But I had 5 days. 5 days to figure out what he'd used, why he'd done it, and how to stop him. 5 days to save everything. Emily squeezed my arm. Tell me how I can help. I didn't have an answer yet. But standing in that parking lot, betrayal still fresh as an open wound, I knew one thing with absolute clarity. This ended Friday. The carriage house laboratory smelled like my father. Oak and rubbing alcohol, and 40 years of careful work distilled into chemical traces. Past midnight when I unlocked the door, but sleep wasn't an option, not after watching my son poison me on camera. The fluorescent lights buzzed to life, illuminating equipment my grandfather had brought from France in the 1950s, glass beakers and copper distillation coils, polished by 3 generations of use. Tonight, I needed them to tell me exactly how Connor was killing me. I cut the wine-stained fabric from my jacket sleeve with surgical scissors, hands steadier now that I had purpose, placed it in a test tube, added solvent, sealed it, gave it a shake. The stain dissolved into cloudy liquid. While it processed, I pulled down toxicology textbooks I hadn't opened since graduate school at UC Davis. If there was poison in my system, the chemical breakdown would reveal it. Everything left traces, even betrayal. The chromatography equipment took 90 minutes to warm up and run the sample. I spent that time pacing the lab, my mind cycling through possibilities. What compound could destroy taste and smell without killing outright? What would make a doctor diagnose age-related degeneration instead of poisoning? When the printout finally emerged, I had my answer. 2 chemical peaks, sharp and unmistakable, Zinc chelator, a compound that bound to zinc in the bloodstream and flushed it out through the kidneys. And sulfite receptor blocker, industrial chemistry used in wine production testing, never meant for human consumption. Together, they were brilliant. Evil, but brilliant. Zinc deficiency destroyed taste and smell gradually, mimicking natural aging. The sulfite blocker specifically targeted the receptors that detected wine compounds, sabotaging the one sense I'd built my entire life around. I'd been losing my palate not because of age, but because Connor was systematically dismantling it. The most important discovery? Both compounds were temporary. Stop the exposure, supplement with zinc, and my senses would return. Slowly, but completely. Connor hadn't wanted me dead. He'd wanted me broken, confused, desperate enough to sign away everything I'd built. I left the lab at 3 a.m. and went to the main house. Connor and Sarah had driven back to their San Francisco apartment after dinner. They kept a place in the city, visited the estate 3 or 4 times a week. The house was mine. I started with the kitchen. The vitamin bottles Connor had given me 3 months ago sat cheerfully in the cabinet. Nature's Strength Zinc Support Formula for your health, Dad, he'd said, pressing them into my hands with such concern in his eyes. I peeled away the label. Underneath, in stark black and red, Vint Global Industrial Solutions Division, Sample Batch Alpha 7, not for resale, not vitamins, the poison itself, repackaged. In Connor's old bedroom I found more, empty vials in the bathroom trash, each embossed with the same logo. Property of Vint Global, not for resale. Someone had been supplying him. Someone with access to industrial chemicals and a complete absence of conscience. His desk drawer held the final piece: gambling debts, casino markers from Las Vegas, Reno, Atlantic City, credit card statements with cash advances circled in desperate red ink, $3.2 million, payment due in 90 days, 3 months, the same timeline as my symptoms. If I signed next week, Connor would control a winery worth $120 million, more than enough to clear his debts, more than enough to justify destroying his father in the process. I sat at my father's old desk, surrounded by evidence of my son's betrayal. Behind me, Margaret's photograph smiled from its shelf, her laughing face frozen 20 years ago in the same room, holding a bottle of our 1998 vintage like a newborn child. I couldn't do this alone. Connor had a partner, someone at Vint Global who'd provided the compounds, helped plan this. I needed help from someone I trusted absolutely. I reached for my phone and found Daniel Pierce's number. He answered on the second ring, his voice rough with sleep. "Richard, it's 3 a.m. "I need you at the estate," I said. "Now, and Daniel, don't tell anyone." Silence. Then, "I'll be there in 20 minutes. I hung up and looked at the vials lined up on my desk. Vint Global. By Friday, I'd know who they were, and they'd learn what happened when you came after in Ashford. Daniel's truck pulled up the drive at 3:47 a.m. I watched from the window as he climbed out, still wearing the flannel shirt he probably slept in. We'd known each other 35 years since he'd started as a harvest worker fresh out of high school. Now he managed the entire vineyard operation, knew every acre of Ashford estate as well as I did. When I opened the door, he took one look at my face and asked no questions. I led him to the study and handed him one of the vials. My son is poisoning me." Daniel held it to the lamplight, then looked at me, didn't question, didn't ask if I was certain, just, "What do you need?" "The vintage collection, every bottle. It needs to be moved before Friday." "Moved where?" "Anywhere Connor can't find it." I kept my voice level. "He's planning to destroy it. I need it gone by Thursday night." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he squeezed my shoulder, hard. "The wine will be safe, old friend. I swear it." He didn't ask why. 35 years together meant trust without explanation, but I saw understanding in his eyes. He knew what I was asking could cost him everything if we failed. "Thursday night," I repeated. Daniel nodded and disappeared into the darkness. I stood alone in the study looking at Margaret's photograph. She'd died 10 years ago this spring. Pancreatic cancer, 6 cruel months from diagnosis to grave. Near the end, when morphine blurred everything else, she'd squeezed my hand and whispered, "Take care of Connor. He needs guidance." I'd promised her I would. "I failed you, Maggie," I murmured to the photograph. "I couldn't save him, but I can stop him." My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Can't sleep. Found something else. Connor asked about our security system last month, wanted to know camera blind spots. Emily Carter. I replied, meet me tomorrow. We need a plan. Saturday morning, I made the call that would set everything in motion. My voice shook, not from weakness, but from the effort of sounding weak. Connor, I can't wait until next week. Come today. Bring the papers. Silence on the other end. Then, carefully, Dad, are you sure? You sound... I woke up and couldn't smell my coffee. I let the words crack. Nothing. Not even bitterness. It's all gone, son. Muffled conversation. Sarah's voice in the background, though I couldn't make out the words. When Connor came back, his voice was smooth with barely contained excitement. We'll be there by 2. Thank you. I made it surrender. I want this over. They arrived at exactly 2 o'clock with a bakery box and the power of attorney documents in a leather folder. I met them in my bathrobe, let my hand shake on the doorframe. Connor's eyes gleamed. Dad, you look terrible. I feel terrible. I shuffled toward the living room, playing the part. What's that smell? Something's burning. Sarah set the cake on the coffee table. Chocolate, Richard, your favorite. I leaned over it and jerked back. That's not chocolate. It smells like burnt rubber, like chemicals. I looked at Connor with genuine suspicion. Are you trying to poison me? His hand found my shoulder, warm and steady and completely false. Dad, your nose is confused. Let's get these signed so you can rest. He spread the documents across the table. General power of attorney, cream paper, his lawyer's seal embossed at the bottom, my name waiting for a signature that would end everything. I reached for the pen, fumbled for my reading glasses, knocked them to the floor with a shaking hand. When I straightened, my elbow caught the water carafe. Crystal met mahogany with a sound like breaking. Water flooded across the documents, ink bleeding, seal dissolving into soggy pulp. No, Connor lunged, but too late. The power of attorney was ruined. I'm sorry. I made my voice crack. My hands don't work anymore. He stood there, holding dripping paper, his face cycling through rage and forced patience. When he looked up, the mask was back in place. It's fine, Dad. We'll print new ones Monday. No. I looked up, confusion clouding my eyes. At the office, Friday, the board meeting. If I'm signing away 40 years, I want witnesses, so everyone knows it was my choice. Connor glanced at Sarah. She nodded slightly. Witnesses would make it harder to contest later. Okay, Dad. Friday at the board meeting. They left soon after. I watched their car disappear down the drive, then waited for dark. Emily arrived at 8 o'clock, parking her beat-up Honda behind the barrel room where Connor wouldn't see it if he came back unexpectedly. I met her at the door, and for the first time, I really looked at her. Late 20s, maybe 30. Sharp intelligence in her eyes that reminded me of Margaret, the kind of person who noticed things other people missed. Tell me why you helped me, I said. She didn't answer right away. We walked through the vineyard in silence, rows of vines disappearing into darkness on either side. Finally, she spoke. 5 years ago, my sister died. Pills in her food, we think. Her husband said she was just tired all the time, losing weight, getting confused. Doctors called it natural causes. She was 31. You think he poisoned her? I know he did, but I couldn't prove it. And by the time I realized what was happening, she stopped walking. I watched her funeral on Zoom because I couldn't afford the flight from New York. I'd been blacklisted from every decent restaurant in the city for calling out my boss for watering down expensive wine. Couldn't get a job, couldn't help my sister, couldn't do anything. That's why you're here, in Napa. Fresh start. Or that's what I told myself. She looked at me. When I saw Connor do that to your wine, I saw my brother-in-law, and I couldn't let it happen again. We started walking again. I understood now. She wasn't just helping me. She was saving herself from 5 years of guilt. I need you to keep watching him, I said. At the restaurant. If he meets anyone, if he makes calls, I need to know. Already am. She pulled out her phone, showed me a photo from earlier that day. Connor at Ferry Building in San Francisco, talking to a tall man in his 60s. Gray hair, expensive suit. They looked angry. I zoomed in on the man's face and felt the ground shift under my feet. Robert Hammond, my best friend, 30 years ago, the co-founder of Ashford Estate before I bought him out in 1996 for $2.5 million. The man who'd sworn, the day I handed him that check, that he'd prove me wrong about everything. "Do you know him?" Emily asked. "Yes." My voice sounded hollow. "I know him." For 4 days I played the dying patriarch, shuffled when Connor watched, fumbled with wine glasses, squinted at labels I could read perfectly, let him see exactly what he wanted to see. But alone in the lab, I was healing. Zinc-rich solutions 3 times a day, activated charcoal to bind toxins, milk thistle for liver support. By Monday, I could taste the bitterness in my coffee, actually taste it, not just remember what it should be like. By Tuesday, the oak barrels in the cellar smelled like oak again, not nothing. I kept it hidden. When Connor visited, and he visited often now, circling like a vulture waiting for death, I made sure to sniff wine and declare it odorless. Made sure my hand trembled when I lifted the glass. He grew confident, careless. Wednesday afternoon, I sat in the living room pretending to doze while Connor paced the garden, phone pressed to his ear. He thought the French doors were closed. I'd left them cracked open an inch. His voice drifted through clearly. "Friday night, the tankers roll in. We'll have crews working through the weekend. Flush it all. Every barrel, every bottle." Silence while he listened. "I don't care what it's worth at auction." Connor's voice turned sharp. "I need liquid assets now. The casino's not going to wait for some wine collector to bid at Sotheby's." My hands clenched on the armrest. "Just process it all as industrial base. Nobody needs to know we're dumping $30 million worth of vintage wine down a drain." He laughed at something on the other end. "Your fresh, clean line will be on shelves by Christmas." "Fresh, clean line?" "Yeah, the old man's signing Friday morning. After that, the estate's mine. We'll rebrand by end of month." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried something cruel and small. "Trust me, Richard Ashford won't know what hit him. By the time he realizes what we're doing, he'll be too senile to stop it." The call ended. Connor walked back inside, saw me sleeping in the chair, and smiled. Later that evening, while Connor showered upstairs, I went to his room. His briefcase sat on the bed, unlocked. Arrogant or stupid, maybe both. Inside, I found the rebrand proposal. The first page showed my logo, the elegant script A entwined with grapevines that my grandfather had designed in 1952, the same logo that appeared on bottles in restaurants from New York to Tokyo. Across it, a red X. The next page made my stomach turn. New logo, garish green and orange. Blocky sans serif font screaming Ashford Clean, the scent of clean. Below it, product mock-ups. My hand-blown crystal bottles, vessels that had once held Evening in Paris and Golden Autumn, wines that critics had called transformative, now filled with neon blue liquid. The labels read, all-purpose bathroom cleaner, toilet bowl power gel, pipe unblocker, maximum strength. The tagline at the bottom, Ashford, from vineyard to your home. They weren't just stealing the winery, they were turning 3 generations of craftsmanship into bathroom chemicals. My name, Margaret's memory, my father's legacy, reduced to toilet bowl commercials. I thought of Margaret's photo in the lab, her laughing face as she'd helped me blend the 1998 vintage, the one that had won double gold at the International Wine Challenge. "This one's special, Richard," she'd said. "People will remember this wine long after we're gone." They'd remember it as drain cleaner instead. I closed the briefcase, hands steady despite the rage burning through me. Connor wanted to flush my life's work down literal drains, wanted to make the Ashford name synonymous with cheap chemicals and empty promises. Thursday night, the trucks would come. But Connor didn't know yet that his precious collection, every bottle he planned to destroy, would vanish first. My phone buzzed. Emily. Connor met the same man again. Ferry Building, 4 p.m. They argued, got a better photo. The image loaded. Robert Hammond, clear as day, pointing his finger at Connor's chest. Connor's face pale, defensive. I texted back, "Can you get closer next time? I need to hear what they're saying." "We'll try. Be careful, Richard." I sat alone in Connor's room, surrounded by his betrayal, and let myself remember. 1988. Robert Hammond and I, both 30 years old, both convinced we'd change the wine industry. We'd pooled everything we had, Robert's inheritance from his father, my savings from working at Mondavi, and bought 40 acres of rocky Napa soil that everyone said was worthless. We'd proved them wrong together. For 8 years, we were brothers, built the winery from nothing, slept in the barn during harvest, argued about every decision, pruning schedules, barrel selection, blend ratios. but always found our way to agreement, until 1995. "We need to scale up," Robert had said. We were in this same room, his office then, Connor's bedroom now. "Mass production, get our wines into grocery stores across the country." "At what cost?" I'd asked. "We'd have to dilute quality, use cheaper grapes, faster aging." "It's called growth, Richard. It's called profit. It's called destroying what we've built." The argument had lasted months. Robert wanted volume. I wanted perfection. He saw dollar signs. I saw legacy. In the end, I'd bought him out. $2.5 million. Every penny I could borrow. He'd taken the check and left without saying goodbye. Founded Vint Global 3 months later. Industrial chemicals, cleaning solutions, wine production supplies. Built it into a successful company. Proved he didn't need me. But Ashford Estate had thrived, grown to a $120 million valuation, won awards, earned respect, and Robert had never forgiven me for being right. Now, 30 years later, he'd found the perfect revenge. My own son, drowning in debt, desperate enough to destroy his father, stupid enough to think Robert was helping him. I pulled out my phone and called Emily. "I need you to do something for me," I said when she answered. "Tomorrow, if Connor meets Robert again, get close enough to record them. I need to know exactly what they're planning." "Richard, if they see me—" "They won't. You're a sommelier. You know how to be invisible when you need to be." A pause, then, "Okay, I'll try. One more thing. After this is over, if you still want it, you have a job here. Assistant winemaker. Salary, benefits, the works." Her breath caught. "You don't have to—" "I know, but you saved my life, and you understand what matters. That's worth more than any resume." After we hung up, I sat in the darkness of Connor's room and wondered when exactly I'd lost my son. Was it when Margaret died? Was it earlier, some moment I'd missed while focusing on harvest schedules and barrel tastings? Or had I never really had him at all? Thursday morning, my phone rang at 7 a.m. Emily, her voice tight. "Sarah just called me. She wants to meet." "Alone?" "Where?" "Coffee shop in Yuntville, 10 o'clock. She sounded scared, Richard." "Don't go alone. I'll be nearby." "She specifically said no one else. If she sees you, she'll run." I thought about it. Emily was smart, careful. And Sarah was the wild card in all of this. Connor's wife, his accomplice. Or was she? "Okay, but keep your phone on. If anything feels wrong, you call me immediately." At 9:45, I parked 3 blocks from the coffee shop and waited. Watched Sarah arrive at 9:58, looking over her shoulder twice before going inside. She wore sunglasses despite the overcast morning, a scarf wrapped high around her neck. Emily showed up at exactly 10. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I could see them through the window. Sarah was crying within 5 minutes, Emily leaning forward, listening. At one point, Sarah pulled something from her purse, photographs it looked like, and slid them across the table. They talked for 40 minutes. When Sarah left, she looked smaller somehow, diminished. Emily came to my car 10 minutes later and got in without a word. She handed me the photograph Sarah had left. Casino receipts, 3 years' worth, the earliest dated 6 months before Connor and Sarah's wedding. "She didn't know," Emily said quietly. "When they got married, she had no idea about the gambling. He hid it for 2 years. By the time she found out, they were married, and he told her it was under control. Clearly it wasn't. $3.2 million. She showed me the threats from the casino. Not just money. They threatened to hurt any children they might have. Connor told her if she left him, he'd make sure she went down too, that he'd say she was part of it." I looked at the photographs. Sarah's face in several of them, standing beside Connor at casino tables, smiling for the camera. Evidence that could be twisted into complicity. 2 months ago, she saw him putting something in your wine at a family dinner, confronted him. He told her— Emily's voice dropped. "He told her you were old and dying anyway, that this was just speeding up the inevitable, that if she said anything, he'd tell the police she'd helped him, that she'd go to prison." She believed him. She was terrified, is terrified. Emily met my eyes. "Richard, she wants out. She wants to help, but she's afraid." I thought about Margaret, how she'd always seen the best in people, even when I couldn't, how she'd insisted that everyone deserved a second chance, a path to redemption. "Set up a meeting," I said. "This afternoon. Somewhere private. Tell her I want to help her, but she has to help me first." We met at the oak tree on the eastern edge of the property, the same tree where my father had taught me to prune vines 50 years ago. Sarah arrived at 3 o'clock, eyes red behind her sunglasses. I'd brought two things, a business card and a bottle of water. "You're not drinking anything Connor gives you anymore," I said, handing her the water. "Sealed bottle. Check it yourself." She took it with shaking hands, didn't open it. "I know you're scared," I said. "I know Connor threatened you, but Sarah, you need to understand something. He's not going to stop with me. Men like him, once they cross certain lines, they keep crossing them. He's my husband. He's poisoning his own father. What happens when you become inconvenient, when you know too much? When the casino comes after him again and he needs someone else to blame?" She was crying now, silent tears running down her face. I held out the business card. "Detective James Porter. He's a friend, 20 years. I've already spoken to him about offering you immunity in exchange for testimony." "Immunity?" "You testify against Connor and Robert Hammond. Tell them everything you know. In exchange, no charges, clean slate. You walk away from this." Her hand hovered over the card but didn't take it. "He said he loved me," she whispered. "When we met. I was working at a gallery in San Francisco. He came in so charming, so interested in art. We dated for 6 months before he proposed. I thought..." She shook her head. "I thought I'd found someone real." "Maybe you did once. But that's not who he is now. If I testify, I'll have nothing. No money, no home. Connor's family, your family, that's all I have. You'll have your freedom. You'll have the truth on your side." I paused. "And for what it's worth, after this is over, I'll make sure you're not destitute, not a fortune, but enough to start over somewhere new, somewhere he can't find you." She finally took the card, held it like it might burn her. "I need time to think." "You have until tomorrow morning. The board meeting is at 9. If you're going to help, I need to know before then." She nodded and walked away, still holding the unopened water bottle and the detective's card. Emily had been watching from the barn. She came over after Sarah left. "Do you think she'll do it?" she asked. "I don't know, but I gave her a choice. That's more than Connor ever did." Thursday night, 11 p.m. Daniel's refrigerated truck backed up to the cellar entrance, headlights off, engine rumbling low. 3 workers climbed out: Miguel Torres, Jake Morrison, and Lisa Brennan. People I'd known for years, people who understood what we were protecting. No one spoke. We worked in silence. Glass clinked softly as bottles slid from their wooden racks. 40 years of my life lined those stone walls, each vintage a memory trapped in glass, aging patiently, waiting for the perfect moment to be opened. The 1974 that Margaret and I had made during our honeymoon summer, young and in love and convinced we could do anything. The 1982 that won gold at the Paris International Competition, put Ashford Estate on the world map. The 1998 evening in Paris that critics still called my defining masterpiece, the wine that made sommeliers weep. And the 1987, Connor's birth year. I'd made 20 cases that vintage, kept every bottle. They were supposed to be opened at milestones. His wedding day, the birth of his first child, the afternoon he'd take over the winery with pride instead of poison. Celebrations that would never happen now. I pulled one bottle from its slot in the rack. The label had yellowed slightly over 37 years, the wax seal cracked with age. Inside, the wine had been maturing patiently, waiting for a moment worthy of it. "Made this when he was born," I said quietly. Daniel had come to stand beside me, his weathered face sad but firm. "Saved it for the day he'd earn it." Daniel looked at the bottle, then at me. "Save it for someone who deserves it." I nodded once and placed it carefully in the padded crate. Someone would drink this wine someday. Someone who understood what it meant to build something slowly, with patience and love. Just not my son. The crew worked through the night with methodical silence. Every bottle cataloged, wrapped in protective tissue, loaded into climate-controlled trucks. The 1950s reserves my father had made with his own hands. The 60s vintages that established Ashford's reputation across California. The experimental blends I'd been aging in Hungarian oak, waiting for them to reach their full potential. We replaced them all with decoys, bottles filled with water tinted red with food coloring, scented with cheap synthetic wine essence Daniel had picked up from a restaurant supply warehouse. From a distance, in the cellar's dim lighting, they looked authentic. Up close, They were completely worthless. By 5 in the morning, the final truck pulled away into gray pre-dawn darkness. The cellars looked exactly the same. Bottles still gleaming in their racks, dust motes still floating through air that smelled of oak. But every single bottle was now a carefully crafted lie, just like Connor's promises had been. I locked the heavy cellar door and walked back to the main house. Managed 2 hours of restless sleep on my study sofa before the alarm went off. When I woke, the sun was rising over the vineyard, gilding every leaf gold. I showered and dressed. Not in the cardigan Connor expected, but in my charcoal wool suit. The same one I'd worn to bury Margaret 10 years ago. Today, I'd bury something else. At 7:30 a.m., my phone buzzed. Emily, recording from yesterday. You need to hear this. The audio file loaded. Robert Hammond's voice, clear and angry. Told you to be patient, Connor. You're pushing too hard. The casino wants their money Friday or they start breaking bones, Robert. I don't have time to be patient. If you'd listened to me in the first place, stuck to the plan, your plan was taking too long. Another month of watching him shuffle around, pretending to care. The point was to make it look natural, age-related decline. Now you've got that sommelier suspicious, you've got your wife falling apart. Sarah won't talk. She's too scared. Fear makes people unpredictable, just like desperation. You should know that better than anyone. Silence. Then Robert again, quieter. After tomorrow, you're on your own. I've given you the chemicals, the plan, the cover story. But Vint Global can't be connected to this. Are we clear? Crystal. Good. Because if this goes wrong, Connor, I will bury you. Your father might have kept me from the legacy I deserved, but I won't let his worthless son drag me down too. The recording ended. I sat in my car in the parking lot of the French Laundry, where this had all started 6 days ago, and listened to it 3 more times. Robert had called me last week, Wednesday, asked how I was feeling, if I needed anything, concerned, friendly. The old Robert I remembered. It had all been performance, checking if the poison was working, making sure I was weak enough for the final push. 30 years of hatred distilled into this. I texted Emily. Perfect. Send it to Detective Porter. We'll need it for tomorrow. Then I texted Daniel. Thank you for everything. His response came immediately. That's what brothers do. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. Clear eyes, steady hands. The zinc supplements had worked. My senses were returning. Not fully, but enough. This morning, I'd tasted my coffee. Actually tasted it. Bitter and hot and real. Connor thought he'd already won. Thought I'd show up at the board meeting confused and desperate, ready to sign away everything. He was about to learn what happened when you came after in Ashford. I pulled out of the parking lot and headed for San Francisco. The end game had begun. Friday morning, 8:45 a.m., I walked into Vint Global's 15th floor conference room carrying 2 crystal decanters and the weight of 40 years. The board members were already seated. Jennifer Hayes, legal counsel, Brian Matthews, CFO, Stephen Palmer, COO. Connor and Sarah sat together, but not touching. Sarah's knuckles were white, and at the head of the table sat Robert Hammond. 30 years older, but unchanged where it mattered. Same sharp jawline, same calculating eyes, same hunger to win. Richard. His smile was smooth. It's been too long. Has it? I set my briefcase down. Seems like you've been closer than I thought. Connor shifted. Robert's smile tightened. Shall we begin? Robert gestured to the documents. I understand you're ready to sign. In a moment, but first, a tradition. My father taught me, never finalize a deal without sharing wine. Richard, I don't think, just a formality. I lifted the first decanter. If Vint is acquiring Ashford's legacy, you should understand what makes our wine special. I poured for Jennifer first. 2018 Reserve. Tell me what you smell. She leaned in. Blackberry, oak, truffle. Exactly right. I poured for Brian and Stephen. Both gave similar answers. Then I reached for the second decanter. And this is something rare. I poured pale gold liquid for Robert. He inhaled, smiled. Delicate. Honeysuckle, white pepper. I poured for Connor. What do you smell? His hand trembled. Oak, cherry, earth. I set the decanter down carefully. Interesting. Because what you're both smelling is industrial zinc chelator mixed with sulfite receptor blocker. The poison designed to destroy my palate. Silence. Jennifer's pen froze. Brian stopped breathing. Robert recovered first. Richard, you're clearly unwell. Then why did you describe poison as honeysuckle? Why did Connor smell cherry? I turned to Jennifer. You identified real wine correctly. They identified poison as pleasant because their noses work fine. Mine doesn't, not anymore. Connor went white. Dad, I don't know that Vint manufactures zinc chelators? Don't know Robert's been supplying you with compounds to destroy a winemaker's senses? I pulled out lab reports. December, zinc at 90 micrograms. Normal, March 52, May 31. Last week, 18, 6 months of documented poisoning. Jennifer examined them, face draining. I turned to Robert. 30 years ago you wanted mass production. I refused, so I bought you out for $2.5 million. Robert stood, gripping the table. And you built a $120 million empire while I failed at everything. His veneer cracked. I founded Vint to prove you wrong, but I still hated you because you succeeded your way. So when Connor came to you drowning in $3.2 million of debt, I saw my chance. Robert's voice hardened. Vint Labs provided the poison, slow, untraceable. Destroy your senses, force your signature, dump your vintage collection, dilute every legendary bottle into $19 grocery store cleaner. He smiled uglily. Turn Ashford into bathroom chemicals. I pulled out 12 registered mail receipts. 10 years ago, after Margaret died, I sent you these, offering equal partnership, a chance to rebuild our friendship. Robert's hands shook as he looked at them. You were too consumed by revenge to even open them, I said quietly. I pressed play on my phone. Connor's voice filled the room. The old man can't taste anything. Friday we close. Flush the whole collection. Turn Dad's legacy into toilet cleaner money. Mom would probably want this. She always said he loved wine more than us. My voice cracked. Margaret loved you more than life, Connor. Her last words were, take care of Connor. This would destroy her. Connor's face crumpled. Dad, you had 10 years to honor her memory. You chose this. I stood. You wanted the vintage collection. I moved every bottle Thursday night. Your tankers will find colored water. Connor whispered, impossible. The door opened. Detective James Porter and 3 officers entered. Connor Ashford, Robert Hammond, you're under arrest for conspiracy, attempted murder, and fraud. Handcuffs clicked. Connor collapsed, sobbing. Robert stared with pure hatred. I could have been part of something great, Robert said, twice. Yes, you could have. Sarah stood. Detective Porter, I'm ready to give my statement. The room emptied. I stood alone at the window, looking down at the financial district. I'd won. But victory tasted like ash. 3 months later, Connor got 7 years federal prison. Robert got 15. Sarah testified against them both. The immunity deal held. She walked out free. Vint Global collapsed within 3 weeks. 1 week after sentencing, I met Sarah at a cafe. I don't expect forgiveness, she said. I pushed an envelope across. $50,000. Start over, somewhere new. Why? Because Margaret would have. Someone needs to break this cycle. She left. I never saw her again. Daniel faced investigation for moving the wine. Evidence tampering, prosecutors said. My lawyers fought. Eventually, no charges. But Daniel was shaken. I almost lost everything, he said one evening in the barrel room. I know, I'm sorry. Would you do it again? Long silence. I don't know. The most honest answer I could give. My senses returned slowly. Month 1, salt, sweet. Month 2, bitter, sour. Month 3, cedar, blackberry, leather, earth. The first time I tasted the 1998 evening in Paris after recovery, I was alone in the cellar at midnight. It tasted like Margaret's laughter, like everything I'd almost lost. I cried, surrounded by bottles my son had wanted to destroy. 1 month after sentencing, I visited Connor in prison. Glass partition, phones. The visiting room smelled like cheap chemicals. I'm sorry, Dad, Connor said. I looked at my son. Are you sorry for what you did, or sorry you got caught? He couldn't answer. I loved you. I would have given you anything. You just had to ask. You never would have. You never tried, my voice cracked. You assumed. Assumed I valued wine more than you. Maybe I wasn't the father you needed, but I never would have wanted this. Connor was crying. Please, when I get out. I hung up, stood, walked away while he pounded on the glass. I didn't look back. 6 months later, spring came to Napa Valley. Dawn broke over Ashford Estate. I walked the vineyard with Emily Carter, her notebook open. How do you know when grapes are ready? She asked. You taste them. Not with your mouth, with your heart. She'd been assistant winemaker for 4 months, learning fast, sometimes impatient, sometimes doubting herself, but passionate, honest, real. Wait here. I returned with a dusty bottle. Ashford Reserve 1987, Connor's birth year. Made this to celebrate his future, kept it 37 years for a celebration that never came. I opened it carefully, poured 2 glasses, morning light caught in amber liquid. Taste it, Emily did. It's perfect. Yes, and now it's yours, this legacy, all of it. You're my heir. Richard, you don't have to. You're not my blood, Emily, but you understand what matters. Integrity, quality, truth. That's what Ashford means, a promise. She set down her glass, took a breath. There's something you should know. My stomach tightened. When I showed you that video, I'd been watching Connor for weeks. I installed that camera myself. She met my eyes. Because my sister died from slow poisoning 5 years ago. Her husband, pills in her food, natural causes, they said. She was 31. I never proved it. Emily. When I saw Connor, I saw my brother-in-law. I couldn't let it happen again. Her voice shook. I used you to catch him, to finally stop someone. Silence. Did you save my life? I asked. Yes. Did you give me the truth? Yes. Then we both got what we needed. I lifted my glass. That's not using. That's surviving. Are you angry? I thought about Emily's sister, the guilt she carried, the courage it took. No, I'm grateful. We sat in the vineyard, drinking the wine my son would never taste. The sun rose, gilding every leaf. But I felt older. Victory had cost me Connor forever. The wine tasted perfect, complex, balanced, everything it should be. But nothing tasted quite like it used to, not from poison, because joy was different now, colored by loss, tempered by knowledge of what people could do, even family. What's your dream now? Emily asked. I looked at the vines reaching for light. To make wine that tells the truth. No lies, no pretending, just honest work. Then let's do that, together. Legacy wasn't blood. It was spirit, dedication, love for the craft. Sometimes the family you chose held stronger than the family you were born into. The vines didn't care about my pain. They just kept growing, reaching for light, doing what they were meant to do. And finally, so did I. But at night, alone in the too quiet house, I still looked at Margaret's photograph and wondered if I'd done the right thing, if she'd be proud. The answer never came. Just mourning and vines and the slow, patient work of making something true.